Um, as per my subject line, I guess, I would argue that by Dr. Elder's opinion, I probably do not write well. But I guess that's okay, because it's kind of what we're here trying to figure out. So I feel like I have so many thoughts right now about everything we read and watched this week. A lot of it was really good to hear or read. Like, I agreed with a lot of it, and I think a lot of it made me kind of assess myself, which I think is really important. The first article, The Thinker's Guide to Creative Critical Thinking, I liked a lot of what they said. I mean, it was a small article, small chapter, but I really liked they were talking about how creative and critical thoughts are like like achievements in thoughts, like being able to both creative and critically think. But it made me think, because they talk a lot about how aimless thinking doesn't employ, it's like lazy. It's lazy to be an aimless thinker, and I feel like I've always described myself as like an aimless writer, like a train of thought writer. And while I was reading that article, I kept thinking, like, can you become aimless and resort to like the critical creative thought? And maybe I kind of concluded, but I'd love other people to like kind of weigh in on this, is I concluded that, much like the article's writing about, you can be a painter, and you step back and you look at what you've done, and then you go to the next stroke. Or as a dancer, you watch yourself in the mirror. And the article says that, and I think maybe that's where I was, or at least where I've been in my life as a writer, is like I aimlessly like train of thought write, and then I go through and I like just slash it up and like reevaluate the words that I'm putting down on paper. But I wonder if other people would agree that you can be both aimless and come out as a critical creative thought thinker. Anyway, in chapter 3 of our book, I really enjoyed, they talk about the strong sense critical thinkers tend to be more ethical because they listen and believe. They listen and are willing to take in the experiences of others. It reminded me of, and this is a class I took a long time ago, so I don't know exactly, I don't remember exactly what they said, but they talk about how conservative mindsets tend to be the ones that employ the most fear. It's hard to explain. Like, they're the ones that tend to, like, wage genocide and stuff like that. And I think it's probably along the same lines. Like, this was like a philosophy thought, but I think the idea is that, like, they're not using critical thought. It's like fear-based. And this chapter talks about like the fair-mindedness of thought, using like the virtues of intellectual thought. Like, I think there's intellectual humility, intellectual courage, intellectual empathy, intellectual integrity, intellectual perseverance, confidence in reason, and intellectual autonomy. And all of those require you to have a level of like understanding of others, or at very least to understand that like you may not know if you don't put the work in. And I was trying to think of myself where I'm really good in these virtues and where I kind of struggle. And I kind of wondered if my largest struggles would be in like intellectual integrity and in competence and reason. I would probably argue competence and reason is probably where I struggle the most. I don't know how you guys feel or what you think personally you land in that. In chapter 8, I got really hyped on this chapter. some of it I felt a little attacked, but in all honesty, I love astrology and I love reading about it. And they talk about how you kind of have, like, critical thinking doesn't allow for, like, astrological thinking. So I felt a little attacked, but not in a bad way. I don't mind being attacked. But they talk about, like, objective and subjective experiences. What happens outside of our skin is, like, the objective experience, but in reality, like, there are constantly things happening outside of us, like, objectively speaking, and we don't take them in as experiences. So really all experiences do end up becoming these subjective things because we choose which ones to have a relationship with. I just thought that was, like, really interesting to just think about, like, in a way we do create all of our experiences and try to blame them on these, like, outside for, like, this happened to me, but in reality, like, we engaged in it, like, it became this experience that we bought into, I guess. And they talk about, like, you need to analyze an experience to see how it really affects you, like, what are the raw facts of the experience, what was your attitude when you came into the experience, and how do you interpret the situation in light of your personal point of view. So, you know, like, seeing a fight break out or something, like, all your personal experiences, you have to, like, disregard that. You know, you can't just look at it as, like, if you're pro one person and against the other one, you just are automatically going to defend the person whose side you think you're on, but that's, like, not using creative or, like, critical thinking. Literally one of my notes here is resist mass media influence. Yes, don't rely on your gut feeling. And I very much believe that's true. I grew up with, like, a really liberal family who, anytime we would have intellectual debates, if you will, would always say things like, I just trust my gut. Even if I agreed with them, I always thought that was kind of a weird answer. Anyway, moving on to the video. I loved the line, how can you think well if you can't understand the logic of your thinking? Like, I feel like a child reading a Dr. Seuss book when I read that at first. Like, I had to, like, or when I heard that at first, I had to, like, think about it over and over again. It's, like, such a convoluted sentence, but it's so good. And his answer inevitably was, you can't. You can't think well if you don't understand the logic of your thought. And I love him when he was talking about, like, all these other subjects we practice, or, like, basketball. You have to practice basketball, you have to practice dance, you have to practice art, you have to practice all these things, and then we're, like, blown away that we're supposed to, like, think about our thinking, like, that we're supposed to practice it. Like, of course we have to practice our thinking. I mean, I look at my children and I think everything they do is special and unique and wonderful, but they have to learn to, like, do all of this. They have to practice it over and over again, including thought, even if we don't realize it, even if I don't, like, realize that they're practicing critical thought. And I think it'd be really cool if this course could help me help them be better critical thinkers. There was a lot from this video that I really liked, but I'm getting far out in my time. So I guess I'll just leave it with the critical thought stuff. I also really like, he said something, he talked about rhetoric a lot, which I think we all know about rhetoric, but it's something that sounds good, but it means nothing. Using things like flashy words and fear to convince people, and if you don't recognize that you're being essentially, like, fear-mongered too, then you're not actually using critical thought. But anyway, this was a good critical thinking week in videos and stories.